The first time Nora stood up at Thanksgiving dinner in front of everyone and said, "We all voted, and you're out of the family." I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. I didn't beg or break. I simply blinked once and stared at the space, between her collarbones, where a silver locket hung, the one I bought her when Lily was born. My name was still engraved on the back. Nora wore it anyway. That was the first sign. She wasn't trying to erase me. She was trying to wear me, use me, consume me until there was nothing left. I'm Olivia. And at that table, I didn't lose my family. I lost an illusion I had been financing for over a decade. The room was full. 12 chairs, perfectly arranged. Crystal glasses clinked beside hand-lettered name cards. The smell of roasted turkey and spiced apples filled the air. But it all felt too clean, staged, sterile. Like grief at a wake, just before someone confesses they're glad the old man's dead. Nora smiled like she was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. "Let's not drag this out," she said, gently tapping her glass. "We talked. We voted." "And Olivia, you're no longer family," Cousin Rachel gasped, too loudly. She glanced around, like she wasn't expecting to be the only one faking surprise. Then she clapped, awkward, out of sync, but enough to break the silence. My mother raised her wine glass in a motion too casual to be spontaneous. My father stared at his plate. Everyone else followed the script. Smiles, shrugs, toasts. I looked around and realized something sickening. They weren't blindsided. They had rehearsed this. My mother reached for the cranberry sauce. "It's not personal, sweetie," she said, as if telling me I'd spilled something on my dress. I said nothing. I sat still. I counted breaths. Nora tilted her head. "Liv, come on. You've isolated yourself for years. You don't even like being around us. We're just formalizing what you already made obvious," Aunt Lacey chimed in. "It's like closure for everyone. Closure. A beautiful word. A clean word. But that wasn't what this was. It wasn't closure. It was erasure. Execution with good lighting and linen napkins. Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't have words, but because words right then would have been cheap. Too easy. Instead, I reached into the side pocket of my coat and pulled out a black leather folder. I placed it on the table in front of Nora. Gently. Like setting down a final chess move. She blinked. "What's that?" she asked, laughing nervously. I finally met her eyes. "You'll see." She opened the folder with that familiar smirk, equal parts confidence and cruelty. I'd seen her wear it in high school when she framed me for sneaking out, and again when she let her ex believe I had crashed their car. But this time, the smirk didn't last. Page 1. A printout of a $6,500 wire transfer labeled "Dental Emergency." Page 2. Screenshots of her texts asking for just a short-term boost for Lily's therapy, which insurance later confirmed was fully covered. Page 3. Venmo history that spanned 7 years across multiple family members. She turned pale. By page 5, she stood so fast her chair crashed backward. "You psycho," she hissed. "You've been collecting on us?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. "What is this?" Rachel whispered, leaning closer. Then she flinched as she found her name on one of the tabs. A $4,200 tuition payment, sent the same week she posted. A "cutting out toxic people" Instagram story. Joel, yes, Joel, stood in the doorway. I hadn't seen him arrive. He wasn't supposed to be here. But there he was, holding Lily's coat. He was supposed to be dropping her off. He walked to the table and flipped through the folder. "What's this about Austin?" he said. Nora froze. Page 11. A hotel bill, 3 nights. Not in her name, but charged to Joel's card. The guest was listed as Alyssa K. Joel's hands trembled as he flipped to the next page, a printed screenshot of a group chat. Nora. He's too dumb to figure it out. If he asks, I'll blame Liv again. She's an easy scapegoat. I didn't. Know Joel would show up? I didn't know he'd see that page. That was one of many copies. He turned to me, stunned. You kept all of this? I looked at him calmly. Someone had to. It should have ended there. But my father finally spoke. You're making this into something it's not. That sentence, I'd heard it all my life. When Nora locked me out of the house for hours at age 10, don't exaggerate. When my mother took my college savings to fund Nora's wedding, it's still for D family. When I cried alone after paying off their second mortgage, that's just what you do when you're the one who's okay. You all made it something, I said. I'm just naming it. My mother placed her napkin down. Let's not ruin Thanksgiving. We can fix this. We can talk. Just not like this. I laughed softly. You chose the table. She blinked, confused. This moment? This setting? You all chose it. Public execution. Pretty lighting. But I chose the finale. Reached for my coat again. This time I pulled out a second envelope. Sealed. Thick. I handed it to my mother. You'll want to read that carefully. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside, notarized paperwork. Power of attorney. Revoked. Emergency contact. Removed. Health proxy. Revoked. You're removing yourself from the trust? She whispered. I already have. All accounts frozen. All responsibilities transferred, as of yesterday. But what about us? She asked. There is no us, I said. You voted, remember? A gasp from the far end. Rachel. She looked horrified now. Not out of guilt, but fear. Her signature was on one of the emails included in the folder, mocking my apartment, my lonely lifestyle, the way I dressed like a lawyer but had no one to defend. Joel set the folder down. You told me she was unstable. Nora looked at him. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. He said, You lied to me about everything. She whispered, You don't understand. She's dangerous. Look at this. She came here prepared to humiliate us. No, I said. I came prepared to survive. Everyone stared. No one spoke. Then I stood. As I walked toward the door, my father said, Don't do this. You'll regret it. I paused, just for a second. No, I replied without looking back. You will. And then I left them, surrounded by warm food and cold truths, with only each other to devour. More is coming. But for now, if you've ever been in a room full of people who claim to love you and still chose to cut you down, stay tuned. You're not alone. They called me the reliable one. At first it sounded like a compliment. Steady, strong, the one they could count on. But over time, reliable became a collar. A label they whispered behind closed doors when my name came up. Not out of admiration, but convenience. The one who wouldn't say no. The one who didn't make a fuss. The one who could be ignored, dismissed, then summoned when needed. My name is Olivia. And for years I thought being needed was the same thing as being loved. I didn't realize I'd been written out of the story until long before the vote at Thanksgiving. That moment? It wasn't a beginning. It was a culmination. A carefully laid script, one I had unknowingly helped draft by always showing up, always giving in, always covering the damage they left behind. I remember the first time Nora asked for money. It was casual, offhanded. Liv, can you spot me? A few hundred? Lily's preschool deposits due and Joel forgot to transfer his half. She laughed, blamed it on Joel. I said yes. I always said yes. But that same week, I saw her Instagram story. an impromptu girls' trip to Napa. Self-care before the storm, she captioned it. Lily wasn't in a single photo. Then it became regular. Mortgage, car repairs, emergency vet bills, for a dog they didn't even keep. I paid it all. Quietly. Because I told myself it was love. Because I believed they would do the same for me. They wouldn't. I know that now. They never would have. My mother was subtler. She never asked directly. She simply sighed heavily on the phone. The heater's out again, but we'll manage. Your father's been working extra hours. Then she'd change the subject. I'd wire $600 the next day. She'd reply with a heart emoji. There was no gratitude, only expectation. And Rachel was different. She never asked. She just watched. She stood by, arms folded, nodding in quiet approval whenever someone else extracted from me. She called me Saint Olivia once, half joking, said I was the glue of the family, but the way she said it, like glue was something sticky and cheap, like I was holding together something that should have broken apart a long time ago. 3 months before Thanksgiving, Nora asked me to co-sign a loan for a wellness cafe. It's a passion project, she said. Holistic stuff. Smoothies, crystals, chakra alignment. You'd love it. Joel was gone by then, moved out. She called him unstable in front of Lily and hinted he might sabotage the launch. I hesitated. I don't think I can do that, I said. She didn't push. Not that day. She said, no worries, and changed the subject. But the next morning, she blocked me on everything. Phone, Instagram, Facebook, even Venmo. A week later, my mother stopped calling. My father sent a single text. Hope you're doing okay. Nothing else. The silence wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. I later found out from an old coworker, yes, coworker, that my family had started meeting without me. Brunches, birthdays, planning sessions for family matters. My name wasn't mentioned. My presence wasn't missed. But when my tax documents got rerouted to my parents' house by accident, my mother forwarded them to me with a sticky note. Congrats on another 6-figure year. Hope you're saving. I didn't respond. But that was the moment I started. Printing, receipts, bank transfers, every payment I'd made on their behalf, every favor. Every request labeled urgent that turned into a vacation or gift or, in Nora's case, a silent auction bid on a wine-tasting getaway. I organized everything into labeled folders, color-coded, cross-referenced, documented. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it for proof. For myself. So that when the time came, and I knew it would, I wouldn't question my memory. I wouldn't doubt the truth. The time came faster than I expected. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Rachel called me for the first time in months. Her voice was sweet, too sweet. Hey, Liv, just checking in. Are you coming to Mom and Dad's this year? We're all going to be there, even Nora. I paused. Sure, I said. Wouldn't miss it. She seemed almost surprised. Great, she said. Really great. That was the first alarm. Rachel doesn't make warm calls, not unless there's a script. The second came when Nora texted me the night before Thanksgiving. Just one line. Glad you're coming. Let's make this a healing. Space. Healing. That word, when used by someone who breaks you, means one thing. They're about to hurt you again and blame your reaction for ruining the mood. I packed the black folder that night. I didn't know what they'd say, but I knew what they'd do. People who write you out of the narrative don't want closure. They want silence. The house looked exactly as I expected. Warm lights, perfect centerpieces, holiday music just loud enough to mask awkward conversations. I arrived 10 minutes early. My name card wasn't on the table. My chair was next to the hallway, close to the exit. That wasn't a coincidence. Nora was glowing. Her locket sparkled under the chandelier. She hugged me without touching her chest to mine. A performance for the others. My mother hugged me tighter than usual, but whispered nothing. My father poured himself a scotch and didn't meet my eyes. When Nora tapped her glass before the turkey was carved, my heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. I already knew the words before she said them. We voted. You're out of the family. I watched Rachel closely. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Like she wasn't sure if she should clap yet. That moment told me everything. She hadn't voted. She'd been told, and she'd gone along with it anyway. Later, I would find out she'd been promised a share of my parents' estate, reallocated. From me. We just think it's more fair, my mother had said in a group email. She has a family, you don't. That line would stay with me longer than all the others. Not because it was cruel, but because it was deliberate. The cruelty didn't surprise me. The math did. They hadn't just decided to remove me, they'd replaced me, and they'd hoped I wouldn't notice. I smiled through it. I set the folder down. The rest, you already know. Screams, papers, pale faces, sudden, wild calculations behind nervous eyes. But here's what they still don't understand. They thought they were writing me out. They didn't realize. I brought the pen. The table had been set with surgical precision. Linen napkins folded like origami swans, brass candlesticks at equidistant points, place cards in cursive gold. I remember thinking, as I walked in, that it looked more like a staging for a real estate brochure than a family gathering. And that's exactly what it was. Staged. A beautiful, sterile arena built for execution, not connection. My chair was by the hallway, not near the center, not even flanked by cousins. An edge seat, easy access to the exit, intentional. I sat anyway. Nora was floating through the room like she owned it, which she believed she did. Laughing too loudly, holding Lily too tightly, adjusting her perfect hair like cameras were rolling. I caught her eyes once. She looked at me the way someone might look at a framed picture they meant to take down a year ago. Nostalgia with a hint of irritation. "Olivia, glad you could make it," she said. Warm smile. Cold eyes. "I had a feeling it would be memorable," I replied. She laughed, touched my shoulder and said, "Let's not make it dramatic, okay? A simple request, but I heard the knife in it." That night, I counted 14 smiles that didn't reach eyes. 8 glasses of wine poured before dinner even began. 3 whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. And 1 family photo, taken just before I arrived, my name carefully unmentioned in the group chat coordinating it. They didn't expect me to come. That was their first mistake. I didn't bring the black folder just to make a point. I brought it because history has a habit of being rewritten by the loudest voice in the room, and mine had been quiet for too long. Dinner opened with Nora's toast, as rehearsed. The declaration, the vote, the performative compassion. "We just think this is healthier. For you too." My mother didn't look up. My father exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for decades. Rachel gave a weak smile, like a girl clapping for the villain at the school play because she doesn't want to be seen as disloyal. And then I placed the folder on the table. No announcement. No speech. Just the weight of 5 years of documentation hitting the wood with a subtle but final thunk. "You don't have to read it now," I said. "But you will." Nora opened it first, of course. She always opened the gifts first. That used to hurt me. Now it helped. The first few pages were mild. Wire transfers, loan repayments never honored, promises in writing. Then came the screenshots. Messages where she referred to me as the bank. Group chats where my mother said, "If Olivia's still single by 40, we might as well just have her manage our finances officially." Rachel turned the page, froze. there was a printout of her own message to Nora. Honestly, she's obsessed with playing savior. Let her. At least it keeps her out of our lives. Rachel blinked. I didn't mean... You did, I said, flat. My father flipped to a page labeled Mortgage Bailout 2018. It listed the $17,000 I wired to their joint account. It also listed the immediate $3,200 withdrawal marked Jeweler's Row. That was your anniversary bracelet, wasn't it? I asked. The one you gave Mom and said you saved for months. He didn't answer, but it wasn't the money that broke the room. It was page 42. The picture. Lily in a school art show holding a handmade poster that read, My Auntie Olivia is my hero. Dated 10 days before Nora blocked me from seeing her. Again. The same week she told our family I had chosen to go no contact. My mother's lips parted. You said she didn't want to see Olivia anymore, she said to Nora. She doesn't remember that, Nora snapped. She's a kid. She made that sign, my mom said. With glitter. You said Olivia skipped the show. I looked at them and finally said, The truth isn't messy. You just don't like what it makes you look like. But I wasn't done. I reached into my coat again. Not for more paper, for my phone. And I tapped a button. A soft beep echoed through the dining room. From the corner bookshelf, a small black recording device blinked red. I've been recording the last 40 minutes, I said. And before you say anything about privacy, this is my personal device, in my personal coat pocket. And this is a one-party consent state. My father stood up. You can't be serious. I am, I said, because you're not just liars. You're careful liars, but not careful enough. Why? Because last year, Nora accused me of threatening her, of shouting at her in a parking lot in front of Lily. That accusation cost me visitation rights. It also cost me sleep for 6 months. But I had a security cam clip from that very night, showing Nora screaming at Joel while I stood 10 feet away, unmoving. That clip had never been shown. Until now. Watch this, I said, handing the phone to Rachel. I knew she was the weakest. Link now. She watched. Her face changed. You said she lunged at you, Rachel whispered. She did, Nora said, voice cracking. You weren't there. Rachel turned the phone around. I am now, she said. It unraveled fast after that. Nora's voice rose. My mother started crying, not because of remorse, but because the mask slipped. And when Dad tried to scold me for humiliating the family, I said no, you did that. I just turned the lights on. I left before dessert, but not before Nora chased me into the hallway, grabbed my arm, and hissed, You ruined everything. No, I said. I ended it. As I drove home that night, I passed a streetlight that flickered twice before staying on. It reminded me of myself. How many times I'd tried to dim down, to stay small, to flicker, not shine, just to make them comfortable. Not anymore. They built a show, but I wrote the script and I brought the house down without ever raising my voice. It was 2 nights after Thanksgiving when Joel reached out. A name I hadn't heard in over a year, suddenly glowing on my phone screen like a flare in the dark. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, a misdial, a pocket tap. But it wasn't. The message was deliberate, short, heavy. Is it true? About the wellness loan? I stared at the words for a long time, then typed back, Which part? His reply came fast. The part where she used your name on the application. That part hadn't even made it into the folder. Not yet. The loan Nora applied for. She had submitted preliminary forms to a private lender. I found out because a routine credit check had flagged a $75,000 business line tied to my Social Security number. She hadn't needed my signature. Just access. She had it. She always had it. I hadn't included it in the Thanksgiving folder because I wanted to see how far she'd go. How deep the knife would go before she realized I was the one holding the handle now. "I have the paperwork," I wrote. "It's signed. By you. Forged." Joel didn't reply for a full hour. When he did, it wasn't with questions. "Can you send it to me? My lawyer needs it." I sent it. And then I sat in the dark, in my apartment, with only the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft whine of a streetlight outside to keep me company. I should have felt satisfaction. But what I felt was closer to combustion. All these years, I thought Joel had been a silent passenger in Nora's manipulations. Weak, maybe. Misinformed. I was wrong. He had seen things, dozens of small betrayals, but chose to believe her each time. Because believing me meant seeing himself differently too. A man who stood by and watched a woman poison her own family. That night, he didn't defend her. He didn't even hesitate. 3 days later, Joel filed for full custody of Lily. The YBAM notice was served to Nora at her office. According to a paralegal friend who worked in the same building, she screamed so loud security had to intervene. When my mother called me the next morning, her voice cracked from the very first word. "Olivia," I let the silence drag. "She's devastated," my mother said. Joel blindsided her. "No," I answered. "She walked right into it. You gave him those files. I gave him the truth. You weaponized your sister's mistakes." "No," I said again, colder. "She handed me the bullets. I just chose when to stop dodging." My mother cried then. Not for me, not for Nora, but for herself. Because she knew what came next. The control Nora had always wielded over the family dynamic was disintegrating. And with it, my mother's comfortable illusion of balance. It got worse. Later that same day, I received an email. It was unsigned, but the address was Nora's. The subject line simply read, "Happy now?" There were no pleasantries, no anger even, just a picture. Lily's drawing from school, the one with my name and a glitter heart, torn in half, left on the floor. The caption, "She doesn't remember you anymore." I didn't reply, not because it didn't hurt, but because I understood exactly what. That email was. Nora wasn't trying to guilt me, she was trying to reclaim power. Because if she could convince me I was erasing Lily, not just her, then maybe I'd come crawling back. Maybe I'd start apologizing. Maybe I'd forget who the real villain was. But I didn't crawl. I didn't move. That same evening, Rachel messaged me for the first time since the dinner. "Hey, just checking in." That was a lot. I had no idea you'd kept all of that. Another performance. I waited. 3 hours later, she followed up. "Mom's freaking out. Nora's saying you hacked her accounts. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I wrote. "Did you vote?" It took her 13 minutes to reply. "I didn't say anything. That's not the same." No, it wasn't. It was worse. Inaction. Silence. Those were the tools people like Rachel wielded best, because they left no fingerprints. But silence can scream if you know how to listen. And I'd been listening for a long time. I ended the exchange with one line. Your silence was consent. I didn't hear from her again, until 2 weeks later, when she quietly forwarded me an email chain between Nora and my parents. Plans to refunnel Grandma's trust into an education fund for Lily and future generations. My name was never mentioned, not once. But my contributions counted in full. She had sent it anonymously, no comment, no subject line. But the message was clear. She was jumping ship. Good. Let them eat each other. Joel messaged me again after the hearing. The temporary order gave him primary custody until the full evaluation. Nora had shown up disheveled, no documentation, no legal rep, just fury. The judge hadn't been amused. Joel wrote, "I was blind. I see that now. You warned me." I read the message 3 times before deleting it. He didn't deserve a response. Recognition after ruin isn't redemption, it's strategy. But one sentence stuck in my mind. You warned me. No, I didn't. I enabled, I paid, I stayed silent. Until I didn't, and that silence, broken, became the loudest noise any of them had ever heard. The first message came in just after midnight. A photo. No words. Just an image of Lily sitting cross-legged on a hardwood floor, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in her lap. I recognized it instantly. The drawing she'd made last fall, the one I kept taped to my fridge for months. My Auntie Olivia is my favorite star, written in pink marker, surrounded by wonky stars and glitter. In the photo, it was torn across the middle, one half in her hands, the other lying face down. 3 minutes later, a second message. She doesn't understand why you don't love her anymore. It was from Nora's number. I didn't respond, not because it didn't ache, but because I saw it for what it was. Not grief, not concern, a move, a maneuver, a reshuffling of the game board. When Nora lost Joel, she lost control. When she lost custody, she lost leverage. Now she was trying to rebuild the power structure, brick by brick, using Lily's small, innocent hands to lay the foundation. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from regret, but strategy. I reread every message from the past year, every time Nora used Lily's name like a key to open doors I had closed. Lily misses you. Lily keeps asking, don't make her the casualty. And every time, I had flinched, softened, until now. Because here's the thing about weapons. They lose power when you stop believing they're sharp. The next morning, I removed the last remaining photos of Lily from my living room shelves. Not because I didn't love her, but because I refused to let Nora use my love like a leash. I made coffee. I fed my dog. I sat down and reviewed my will. At noon, I received a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. Carefully chosen sorrow, slow pauses, false warmth. Liv, we all made mistakes. Your sister's unraveling. Lily's confused. She cries at night. I know you think you're doing the right thing, but this silence, it's hurting her more than anyone. Another pause. Then carefully, we're still family, Olivia. That phrase used to mean something. Now it sounded like the phrase, before the con. A soft knock before the lockpick slides in. I saved the voicemail. I didn't delete it. I might need it later. That afternoon, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a folded letter, printed. The paper was expensive. The font was clinical. It was from Nora's attorney. She was threatening legal action for character defamation, unauthorized data distribution, and intentional emotional harm. The words blurred as I read them. Not from tears. My eyes were dry. But from a sudden rush of understanding. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She was trying to erase the fallout. But the most telling part of the letter wasn't the threats. It was the attached evidence packet. Screenshots, carefully curated, redacted, rearranged, to suggest I had fabricated the financial records, that I had doctored messages, that I had orchestrated a family scandal out of bitterness. And at the bottom of the final page, a note, written by hand. You always wanted to be the victim. Congratulations. The rage I felt wasn't hot. It was precise, cold, useful. She hadn't learned. She still thought this was about roles, victim, villain, martyr. She didn't understand that I had stepped off the stage completely. I wasn't playing a role anymore. I was directing the ending. Emailed her attorney, CCing mine. Attached were notarized documents, originals, transfer receipts, metadata logs, and, as a final nail, a screen recording, time-stamped, geotagged, of my phone being mirrored, showing the messages in real time. Undeniable. I copied Joel. He replied 10 minutes later. They're trying to subpoena Lily's school records, claiming you've had unauthorized influence. Be ready. Unauthorized influence. The irony almost made me laugh. The only time I ever influenced Lily was when I paid for her private speech therapy after her pediatrician said the public option had a 6-month wait list. That payment? Made through a card Nora handed me. Just to keep things simple. It was my card. The receipt still sat in my drawer. At 4 p.m., Rachel called. I didn't pick up. She tried again, then texted. I didn't know she'd take it this far, I swear. That was when I realized something. Rachel wasn't messaging me out of guilt. She was hedging. The walls were closing in on Nora, and Rachel was trying to slide her name out from under the rubble before it landed. I waited. An hour later, another message. You should talk to Lily. She asked if you're mad at her. She thinks she did something wrong. I stared at the screen. I let the words wash over me. And then I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I wrote a letter, not to Nora, not to Rachel, not even to my mother, to Lily. I kept it simple. I told her I loved her, that adults make mistakes, that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away when things aren't safe, even if it hurts. I told her that being kind and being silent aren't the same thing. I said nothing bad about her mother. I didn't have to. I addressed it, sealed it, walked to the mailbox, and then I stopped. I held it in my hand, and I didn't mail it. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't about Lily. It was about me. And the final thread tying me to them wasn't money or memory or revenge. It was hope. Hope that someone, anyone, would finally understand. I walked back to my apartment, tore the letter in half, and tossed it in the trash. Some silences aren't cruel. They're earned. The call came from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But something about the silence in my apartment made me pick up. Curiosity more than concern. The voice on the other end was clipped. Male, professional. Miss Olivia Bennett? Yes. I'm Mark Callahan, an associate at Wexler & Fitch. I'm calling regarding the trust and property transfer associated with Margaret Bennett, your grandmother. For a moment, I said nothing. My grip tightened on the phone. She passed. Away 6 months ago, he continued, but due to some discrepancies in the executor's filing, the final distribution of her estate has been delayed. Your name is listed as the primary beneficiary for the lake house. I blinked. That's not possible. I was told Nora was managing her care, that she was with her when she died. There was a pause. Then, our records indicate that all palliative and hospice payments for Mrs. Bennett's final months were made from an account registered under your name. We've confirmed this through bank statements and invoices. Nora Bennett never contributed financially. In fact, she was never listed on the care documentation. The blood in my ears went still. Not rushed, just absent. Nora had told everyone she'd moved in with Grandma to help her transition. She'd cried in the group thread about watching her fade, shared photos of hand-holding and meals prepared with love. At the funeral, she'd given a speech about legacy and sacrifice, and our parents had nodded solemnly, clasping her hand like she was the widow of a war hero. But the records said otherwise. I thanked the caller, requested the documents be forwarded to my attorney, and hung up. Then I sat in stillness, not shocked, but calculating. Quiet outrage has a texture. It's smooth, hard-edged, non-porous, like marble. I wasn't drowning, I was refining. Later that week, the documents arrived, neatly bound, with signatures and timestamps. The hospice director had even written a note. Your generosity allowed us to give Margaret dignity in her final days. She always spoke of you with pride. I hadn't seen my grandmother in her last 2 months. Nora had told me she was too confused, that my visits, upset. That it wasn't the same anymore. I'd believed her. That belief cost me goodbye, and now it gave me leverage. The lake house wasn't valuable in the conventional sense. Remote, a bit weather-worn. But to our family, it was sacred. Summers, holidays, the old fishing dock where Nora fell in and blamed me for pushing her. The house was memory. It was myth. And now it was mine. When the official notice went out to the family that I was sole inheritor, my phone rang within the hour. My father's number. He didn't waste time. "I'm going to ask you to reconsider," he said. "Your sister—" "She forged a loan application," I said. "She blocked me from Grandma's final months. She turned our family into a courtroom, without a defense. No. She was grieving. So was I. Difference is, I didn't lie to profit from it." There was a pause. He softened his tone. "She's been talking about restoring the place, making it a family retreat again. You always said it needed work." I could hear it then, not just the plea, but the quiet assumption that I might be swayed with flattery, with shared nostalgia, that I would still play the role I had been cast in since I was 13, Olivia the reliable, Olivia the fixer, Olivia who doesn't say no. But I had learned something Nora never understood. You don't need to shout to burn a bridge. You just stop walking toward it. "I've already made arrangements," I said. "The property's being sold. Proceeds go to the Hospice Foundation, Grandma's real legacy." The silence on his end was jagged. "You're selling the house?" "I already signed the papers." "Without talking to us?" "You voted me out, remember?" I said. "This is just follow-through." He hung up. 3 days later, I received an envelope at my door. No postage, hand-delivered. Inside was a single page. A family photo from the lake house, dated 3 years ago. Nora, our parents, Lily, and me. My face had been scribbled over with a thick black marker. Scrawled across the top, "You always wanted to be alone. Enjoy it." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. They still thought this was about revenge. It wasn't. It was about clarity. I didn't tell anyone about the buyer until the sale was finalized. A woman named Judith from Maine, retired nurse, said the house reminded her of her childhood. I told her about the dock, the fireplace that sometimes smoked, the door that creaked at 3 a.m. She smiled and said, "Sounds like a place that needs to be loved right." I handed her the keys, drove away without looking back. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Rachel. "You really sold it?" "No. Greeting. No punctuation." "Yes. They're melting down. Mom's threatening to contest." "She's not in the will." Rachel paused, then sent, "She says you manipulated Grandma, that you used her condition to cut everyone out. Ask her who paid for the morphine." Rachel didn't respond. Later that week, my mother called. This time, she was less soft. "You humiliated us. I exposed you. We were grieving. You were stealing. You think money's the only measure?" "No," I said, "but it's the only one any of you respected until I took it away." She told me I was cold, that I'd always been detached, that maybe that's why no one stayed with me. And I didn't argue, because I realized something in that moment. She wasn't trying to understand me. She was trying to reduce me. People do that when they run out of control. They shrink you down to the version of yourself they can defeat. They poke at your soft spots hoping one will still bleed, but mine had scarred over. You don't cut what's already closed. They didn't show up at my door. They weren't that bold anymore. What they did instead was quieter, more insidious. It started with the mail. A white envelope, unmarked, tucked under my apartment door one morning. Inside was a folded page and a printed email thread between my parents and a real estate agent I recognized. He had been at our church for years. The emails discussed a joint family property refinancing option. They were looking to take out a loan against the lake house, the one I had already sold. What they didn't know yet, or refused to accept, was that I had closed the sale, too. Weeks prior, transferred ownership and filed everything under my LLC. Not for secrecy, but protection. I hadn't just removed them from my life. I had removed them from every document that could ever be twisted against me again. So this wasn't a request, it was a delusion. I forwarded the email to my attorney. Then I called the agent directly. They said the property was still pending. It's not. I hold the deed, I said. Any document they provided is fraudulent. There was a pause, a long one. They told me you were mentally unwell, he said quietly. That's why they were managing the estate. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. That was always their move. Strip me of credibility then. Claim concern. They didn't want control. They wanted my silence. And when I refused to give it, they needed a reason to discredit the noise. 2 days later, Dad called. Not from his cell. From a blocked number. Like a coward. I need to talk, he said. I said nothing. He filled the silence. Your mother's not doing well. The sale of the house. It broke her. You mean the house I paid to maintain for 5 years? Sentiment matters more than bills. Not to you. Not when you needed braces for Nora. Or the roof redone. Or Lily's summer camp. My voice didn't rise, but I could feel him shrink. He pivoted. There's no shame in admitting things got out of hand. Maybe you reacted too strongly, I cut in. You want to talk about strong reactions? I walked to my kitchen, opened the drawer, pulled out an old Christmas card, 2 years ago. Nora had sent it after Lily's birthday, the one I wasn't invited to. Inside, beneath the generic love you always, she'd written a single line in blue pen. You're lucky you don't have kids. No one depends on your presence. I had kept it. Not for memory. For evidence, I snapped a photo and texted it to him. He didn't reply. That night, Rachel called. She was breathless, apologetic, cautious. I had no idea about the sale or the trust. They're losing it. Nora's saying she'll take you to court. She can't sue what she doesn't own. She says you manipulated Grandma, that you isolated her. You were in the thread where she told me not to visit. Rachel was silent. You think forwarding me emails makes you neutral? I asked. You think passivity is absolution? She swallowed. I could hear it. I just didn't want to pick sides. You did. You just didn't admit it out loud. She tried to pivot. Lily misses you. Nora told me she doesn't remember me. That's not true, Rachel said. She keeps your picture in her backpack. That was the line that almost cracked me. Almost. But I'd already made peace with this. Affection isn't armor. Children don't deserve to be used as bait. And love, when weaponized, is just another form of war. I said, you should tell Nora that exploiting a child's love doesn't make her stronger. It makes her dangerous. The next day, I changed my emergency contacts, removed my parents, removed Rachel, replaced them with my attorney and my neighbor, Anna, a woman I'd known only 6 months but trusted more than anyone I shared blood. With Anna was the one who found me in the hallway once, holding a rent check for Lily's school, the one that bounced back after I was blocked. Don't send it, Anna had said. If someone wants you around only when you're handing them things, they're not family. They're collectors. Collectors. She had no idea how right she was. Later that week, Mom showed up at my building. I saw her from my window. She was standing in the lobby, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil like it was still 1998, and love could be baked into submission. I didn't buzz her in. She stood there for 23 minutes, then left the dish on the security desk and walked away. I didn't eat it. I didn't touch it. I watched as Anna carried it to the dumpster later that evening, without asking, without comment. That night, I slept for 9 hours, uninterrupted. No calls. No guilt. No obligation. That was the night I realized I was no longer just walking away. I was leaving them behind, entirely. And the scariest thing for them wasn't that I was gone. It was that I wasn't looking back. The documents Grandma left behind weren't supposed to reach me. They were addressed to Nora. Handwritten instructions, sealed in a floral envelope Olivia had seen 100 times on the old woman's kitchen counter. But they reached Olivia because Rachel made a mistake, if it was a mistake at all. "I thought you should see it," Rachel had whispered through the phone, "before Nora has it destroyed." It arrived at Olivia's apartment in a plain manila folder. Inside, a single letter, signed with Grandma's initials and a copy of an amended will. The lake house, which everyone assumed was Nora's inheritance, had in fact been reassigned in 2020, after a long hospitalization where Olivia was the only visitor. "I know how this family works," Grandma had written. "And I know who carries." What? I may not have said it out loud, but I was watching. I always was. It wasn't just the lake house. It was the entire trust. Accounts, land titles, everything the family thought they'd extracted from Olivia by discarding her. They never had. It had all passed quietly into her name, signed by a woman the family had assumed was too far gone to know the truth. They hadn't realized that. Grandma's silence wasn't forgetfulness. It was alignment. And they had misread the board entirely. Olivia didn't reply to Rachel. She didn't thank her. She didn't even confirm receipt. She simply scheduled a meeting. 1 week later, Nora received a formal notice from the probate attorney. The assets were finalized. Retroactive access to any accounts was blocked. Olivia had no legal obligation to fund anyone's tuition, healthcare, or debts. The house she'd been accused of stealing, it had never been stolen. It had been left to her outright. That same night, Joel texted Olivia. "She told me you manipulated Grandma into changing her will, that you gaslit her during her last months." Olivia sent back a photo. It was a selfie, taken in the hospital 3 weeks before Grandma passed. Olivia's hand was holding Grandma's, and in the background, stuck to the IV pole, was a drawing. Lily's drawing, a rainbow over a house. One with Grandma's name scribbled above the door and Olivia's initials over the garden. "Lily gave it to her," Olivia wrote beneath the image. "You weren't there. Nora told you she didn't want visitors. That was a lie." Joel responded with one word. "I know." That same night, Olivia received an email from him. It contained an audio file, recorded 2 years ago on a phone hidden in Joel's jacket during a dinner Olivia wasn't invited to. The family had laughed. They'd joked about her obsession, with fairness. Nora had said she'd rather lose a kidney than give Olivia the satisfaction of being thanked publicly. Dad had said nothing. Mom had changed the subject, but the part that mattered came near the end. "She's not stupid," Nora had said. "She's just waiting for proof, but we've already buried it." That sentence was Olivia's insurance. The next morning, Olivia printed transcripts, sent one to the attorney managing the estate, sent another to Joel. The third she hand-delivered, to the director of Lily's school, along with a notarized document ending all tuition payments from her end, effective immediately. The Gagumi. Final copy? She burned it, at the lake house, alone, not for drama, for closure. She stood by the water, January cold, and let the last ember die on its own. No tears, no music, just wind, biting and honest, exactly how she wanted it. That night, her doorbell rang. She didn't answer. A voice called from the other side. "Rachel, you were right," she said. "I picked the wrong silence." Olivia didn't move. "I didn't come to ask for anything," Rachel added. "I just needed to say it out loud." The next morning, Olivia found a note under her door. Not from Rachel, from Lily. Written in big, crooked letters. "I miss the rainbow house. I miss your hugs. Mommy says you're mean now. but I don't believe her. Beneath it, a drawing. This time the house didn't have any names, just windows, open ones. Olivia stared at it for a long time, then folded it in half and slid it into her filing cabinet. Beneath the deed, beneath the transcript, beneath the contract, canceling every tie she ever had to their demands. That day, she didn't speak to anyone. But by nightfall, she had booked a flight. Not to run, to begin. And this time, every step forward was on her own terms. No inheritance, no guilt, no rescue missions dressed up as loyalty. They had erased her from their table, so she built a new one, and this time, no one voted. The box came back unopened. No note, no signature, just returned. It was the last item. Olivia had mailed to the house where she no longer existed. Inside it, there had been a flash drive. A compilation of scanned receipts, legal documents, account statements, quiet proof of everything they'd taken and twisted. But she hadn't sent it to clear her name. She'd sent it to end the noise. They didn't open it. So Olivia closed the file on her end, permanently. The calendar read February 4th, her grandmother's birthday. She didn't light a candle. She didn't visit the grave. Instead, she stood in her new apartment, looking out over a quiet street filled with strangers' lives, and she sent an email. To Joel. Subject line, Final Entry. Inside, she attached the deed to the lake house, transferred into a community trust. No one could sell it. No one could claim it. It would belong to the land itself now, used only for retreat and shelter, run by a non-profit Olivia had quietly funded for women like her. No fanfare. No plaque, just silence, reshaped into safety. She received no reply and didn't expect one. By the time the voicemail came 3 days later, Olivia had already packed her last box. Hey, Joel's voice cracked slightly. I saw the filing. I hope Lily can visit it someday. And no. No what? Olivia never responded, because there was nothing left to clarify. The family had stopped trying to call. Even Mom. Even Rachel. Nora had gone quiet online, her usual stream of curated perfection tapering off after Olivia's anonymous submission to the local paper. A letter, unsigned, laying out a pattern of emotional embezzlement that matched Nora's long list of sudden friendships, ghosted colleagues, and fractured circles. It had gone viral. No names were printed. But those who needed to recognize it did. And for the first time in years, Olivia's inbox was silent, not empty, just clean. She sipped her tea one evening and noticed the sunset light hitting a corner of her bookshelf. A small ceramic bowl sat there, barely visible. Grandma's. She hadn't even meant to bring it. But it was there, somehow, unbroken through all the moves. Inside, folded small, was Lily's drawing, the one with no names. That she hadn't burned, because innocence isn't the same as ignorance, and Olivia had stopped punishing people for being born into stories they didn't write. She lit a single match, not to burn, but to warm the wax seal of a letter she'd written the night before. This time, addressed to Lily. No accusations. No defense. Just a simple story of a garden and a woman who learned how to stop pouring herself into roots that never grew toward her. She left it in a bank vault, with instructions to deliver it in 10 years. By then, Olivia wouldn't be a ghost. She'd be something else entirely. Someone else entirely. And for the first time, she didn't need a new name for it. She already had one. Olivia. It had never been the one they called her with kindness. But it was the one she kept anyway, because now, she finally belonged to herself. Final reflection. From Olivia to you. If you've made it here, thank you. Not just for listening, but for seeing. For years, I was the quiet one, the helpful one, the dependable daughter, sister, cousin, the one who showed up with casseroles and covered tuition bills, the one who took the late-night calls and never asked to be repaid, and in the end, I was the one they voted out. But that was the gift. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes being cast out is the only way to realize you were never truly inside. So I stopped knocking. I stopped explaining. I stopped bleeding to be worthy, and I started building. Now I live with less noise, but more peace, less family, but more truth. And no, I don't regret it. If you've ever been erased, overlooked, used, or betrayed, know this. You are not the role they wrote for you. You are the author now. And it's okay to write a story where your name is the only one that matters. Take what they tried to bury you with and plant it. You don't owe them your ruin. You owe yourself a beginning, and if this story meant something to you, if you saw yourself in any page of mine, subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to your own courage. Because I promise you, the next story I write might be yours. Tap that subscribe button, turn on the bell, stay with us. The next storm is already brewing, and so is the next revenge.